Okay, so hi folks, this is Abram here with Aspire Adventure Running. It's really exciting to have you all here attending tonight for our Wonderland Circumnavigation webinar. We've got this set up as a webinar Zoom style, so that means that unless I sort of give you permission to speak, then you can't, and that's largely because we're expecting about 60, anywhere between 25 to 60 people to show up this evening. For the flow, what I'd like to do is to go with a pretty quick overview, do a screen share here in a moment where we'll go over the general flow. Sorry, I've got someone knocking on my door. Just give me 1 minute. All right, that was one of my kiddos. So if anything, COVID has normalized the fact that we all balance life and family and work. So here I am from the home office. So flow tonight will be for me to do a screen share. I'll go over sort of the route, pretty superficial level. The big majority of the time I'd like to give folks to answer their specific questions that they have. So after I do the general overview, then really the best way I think for that to happen is for you to raise your hand, and then I can allocate speaking time for you. That way your question will come through to everyone who's in attendance, everyone will hear it, and then I will answer it. And I'm really committed to being here on this webinar until everyone has every question that they have answered. And so if you feel you've reached a point where I've got all my questions answered, I have all the information I need, feel free to sign off, no problem. If there's still a question you have that you're holding on to, hold on to it. We'll get through all of them, and I'm here to kind of make those happen. So great. So what I will do here now is a screen share. And I'm going to just do an overview of the Wonderland Trail and the flow of kind of what to expect. I don't want to spend too much time on this because a lot of this information is in the course packet that everyone should have. But it is a good sort of tone setting exercise to get a sense of what to expect. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to share my screen. Share, and I'm looking at this map. So really, this is the Cal Topo version of the Wonderland Trail. So here it is. Tahoma is the indigenous name, Mother of Waters Mountain. The Wonderland Circumnavigation is a 95-mile loop trail that begins here in Longmire and circumnavigates Mount Rainier, which is the largest, isolated peak. It's not the tallest isolated peak. Mount Whitney is the tallest peak in North America, but by mass, Mount Rainier is far and away the largest peak in the lower 48. I like to kind of start out just by kind of like really kind of thinking about like meta conceptual principles with this that kind of really can lodge into people's minds as they're completing this route. So this is just a giant volcano that catches a huge amount of maritime precipitation every winter. The snowpack, exceeds 12, 15 feet annually. In over, thousands of years, that's resulted in giant glaciers that come off of the mountain in all directions. And so as you're thinking about completing the Wonderland, we can really think about is each one of these river drainages that you see coming off of the mountain are toes of glaciers. And over time immemorial, those glaciers have expanded and receded and carved out these giant glacial river valleys. And so when we're doing the Wonderland, we're essentially starting at one river valley right here along the Nisqually River. And we'll climb up a giant ridgeline, descend into a river valley, climb another ridgeline, descend into a river valley. And that process will repeat as we go across and around the entire mountain. And so in terms of navigation, the key principle to keep in mind is we're keeping our mountain on the right. The flow for our trip begins for folks that are coming in from out of town. We are running a shuttle in terms of how that relates to COVID and COVID protocols. We are inviting and expecting people to keep their masks on during our indoor shuttles. At present, we're operating off of a principle where pretty much everyone who's signed up and is coming on these trips are vaccinated. We're not doing masks in camp or in our base camps. By the national, I will say the national park has asked us, as of my last communication with them, asked us to kind of use face coverings when we're passing people on the trail. But it's been a couple months since I had communication with them, and that's sort of an evolving situation. But I digress a little bit. Our flow is to meet folks in Ashford, which is just a little bit here outside of town. For folks that are coming in from out of town, we are running our airport shuttle. And then we come out here to Ashford, Washington, which is not really very well located on this map, but it's right around this particular zone. We camp here at Big Creek on Wednesday evening. Also, we'll meet all of our runners at the Whitaker Mountaineering at 5 o'clock, camp at the Big Creek Campground, and then begin our run on the Thursday. Day one is a 34-mile day to Mowich Lake, which is here. Day two is a 28-mile day that goes, and we really, the standard Wonderland is this red line that kind of goes here along the north of the mountain. When we have good visibility, which is most of August, we send our runners from Mowich Lake through Spray Park, which is sort of defined as an alternate, but ultimately it's a more beautiful and scenic route that, rather than sort of dropping through this river drainage, we come up high onto the glacier and drop around to the Carbon River, continue on the Wonderland Trail to White River, and then day three is from White River and a 32-mile day with an aid station at Box Canyon, and then finishing back in Longmire. So that's the flow. That shouldn't, if that comes as a surprise to anyone, it shouldn't be. Okay, what I want to do now is I'm going to stop the screen share and sort of like, I just really want to know what questions people have. So I'm going to look at the, let's see, what am I looking at? I'm looking at, I guess I'll look at the chat. I can't see very well. Like, my Zoom view is not giving me great information about people who've raised their hands. So, okay, so I'm currently looking at the chat window and going through here. So Brendis is asking, can I pay to have a guest for one dinner and one breakfast? So short answer is like, yeah, that's totally easy. We'll work them in. If you could send me an email to do that, then we can figure out what night that is, what their dietary preferences are, and we can kind of incorporate that into our flow. Jane Sinkoff is asking, I do not have any other emails from you with questions of me. To be honest, James, I'm not totally following your question. If you want to throw something else there in the chat, I will try and get that answered. Brendis is asking, will we have hair dryers? So the answer to hair dryers is no. We will have a charging block that's sufficient for charging phones and for charging watches, but we just simply won't have the wattage to run a hair dryer. We do, in terms of sort of our base camp amenities, we will have a portable backcountry shower, a large 10 by 20 tent with heaters, and we'll take care of all of the food and logistics on that end. Um, what kind of food? So Payushi, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. What kind of food and when would it be provided during the running day? So each day will be bookended with meals. So our general menu, and this can kind of be adapted, but we see a range of dietary preferences on all of our trips, whether it's vegan, keto, gluten-free, and so we've adapted a menu that really we can kind of like essentially iterate on for all people. So our first night oftentimes is kind of a surf and turf with sort of a vegetarian sausage barbecue style dinner. Salads, fresh and healthy, seasonal is a big mantra that we follow. Dinner and breakfast will be something we'll provide from our base camps. And then on the trail, for going out onto the trail, we'll have a pretty large selection of bars and gels, as well as a wrap station and a peanut butter and jelly station. So if people want to put together a lunch wrap and tortilla, we will have lunch meat, we'll have veggies, we'll have hummus, and people can put together a wrap. In terms of the food that you want to bring for yourself, if there is a particular gel, a particular nutrition strategy or fuel that's unique to you and your body and your training sequence, like you should bring that. Like that should be in your kit. If you're kind of a little bit more flexible in your dietary preferences and what you carry in terms of calories, then you can pull stuff from our bins and send that out with you on the trail. But other than day 3, there's not any aid stations on the trail. There's simply not any road access. There's not any ability for us to put in any sort of mid-run aid except for Box Canyon on day 3. So folks will be carrying their calories and their nutrition for the day. So, and we would be fried. So hopefully, Paishi, that answers your kind of food question. Um, I'm gonna allow Payush to talk. So if that doesn't answer your question, let me know. Are you there? Am I pronouncing your name right, Payushi? I apologize if I'm totally butchering it.
Can you hear me?
Well, maybe you can hear me. I've given you the ability to talk. So if you want to kind of chime in on that, feel free.
Can you hear me?
So Payush, I was also asking about how does bathing and showering work, use lakes throughout? So that's a fantastic question. There's definitely lakes along the route. We definitely encourage, a mid-run swim at St. Andrews Lake on day 1 is a good kind of midway point on day 1. Day 2, Mystic Lake is a great midway point with a pretty fantastic lunch swim. I find that's a pretty rejuvenating flow to my runs on that route. In terms of more traditional bathing, we have a backcountry shower, which has hot water. We have soap in it. We definitely need folks to bring their own towels, so you can be prepared to shower. That'll be at all of the camps. It's a portable backcountry shower. We heat up water on our camp stove, and then it goes into essentially a tank that is pressurized, and then you can spray off with that warm water and soap. And then we have these 2-burner propane heaters that we set up in front of the heater. So it's not the same water pressures that will get you your home shower, but for folks that are doing this sort of backcountry run, it's incredible for rinsing off the dirt and the grime, the salt and the sweat, and being able to change into pretty clean clothes. So that's how the showering works. There are locations, at day 2, your second night, so it would be at the Mowich Lake Camp. There is a lake there that's great for soaking your legs and swimming in. The camp on the end of the second day is at White River. There's not a lake there, but there is a river, and that's a great place to soak tired legs. There's a few sort of tributary streams coming in And we get a lot of runners will just go down into the river bottom and sit in about, 1.5 feet, 2 feet of ice cold glacial melt water just to help with their recovery for the next day. Carla, let's see if I can find you and allow you to talk. Carla, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right,
Hear
I'm just
me.
kind of going through the chat. So you're asking about snow melt,
Yeah,
and will it happen by the first trip or the end of July? Is that correct?
yes.
Awesome. So it's a little hard to say. Each snowpack is a little bit different. It's not, the area that we see most of the snowpack is on day 3, coming out of White River and going up over Panhandle Gap. That's the high point of the trail. It's a kind of a situation where the consequence, there will be traffic. And are you signed up on the first trip going at the end
Yes.
of July?
Yep.
Okay.
And worried about it because I don't want to have to train for a different year.
Sure. And where are you coming from?
Seattle.
Seattle. Okay. And have you traveled in snow before? Is that something you're familiar with, or?
No.
Okay. Um, so, I mean, I would say there will be snow going over Panhandle Gap. Like, I would plan on that being there. And so then the question is going to be, what's going to make you feel the most comfortable traveling over snow? And so your options would be, basically being up there in your trail runners. Um, the next tier up from that would be having poles. Do you run with poles?
I do run with poles. I will have my poles. And actually, I have done a run a little bit through the snow with the little clip on the bottom, or,
Yeah.
snap on the bottom of your shoes, kind of
Yeah.
mini spikes.
Yeah. Micro spikes. Yep.
Yep.
So, I mean, with snow, it really comes down to how comfortable you are, and then what are the tools and accessories that are going to help you feel more comfortable. And a lot of that comes down to your experience level traveling in snow. And so what
Okay.
you may be comfortable with versus what I might be comfortable with could be really different. And so, I would say we want to set you up for success in feeling comfortable. And so the tools that you have available to you when you're sort of doing that day 3 over Panhandle Gap would begin with, one, carrying a set of poles. That's going to give you, 2 extra really solid sort of points of connection with the snowpack. And then your third option would be, a pair of micro spikes. And so if you're someone who's on an earlier season trip, late July, early August, you haven't done a lot of snow travel, then I would recommend carrying both poles and micro spikes. It's
Okay.
not, oh,
It
go ahead.
won't be so bad. It won't be so bad that it will be impassable.
No,
Okay.
it will not
Okay.
be impactful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But it will require you being comfortable traveling on snow.
Okay.
And so, in short, there are a few, I mean, there's definitely a couple places that will not want to slip and fall, but that's where your poles and your micro spikes will come in.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna keep, what I think I'll do, I think for our flow here is I'm just gonna keep going through the chat and then give folks the ability to kind of ask their question out loud. Because it's, having that discussion is always nice. You just don't want to hear me just droning on forever. So Shannon is asking if the only aid station is on day 3, and the answer is yes. Every other stretch is remote. There's not any other road access. So day 3 is broken up at mile 20 at Box Canyon. There will be an aid station, and then from Box Canyon to the finish, it's roughly 12 miles to Longmire. Audrey would like to know if expect to have cell service in the campsites, and I would say negative. There's a few sections where people sort of intermittently pick up cell service, but there's no reliable cell service anywhere on the route. Ted. Let me kind of bring you on for that one. Ted, if you want to kind of have a conversation about that. How technical is the trail, and how do the trails compare with the Northeast New England? Can you hear me, Ted?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay.
How's it going?
Good. We were having this discussion on our group run this morning.
Oh yeah, and what just specifically around how technical are East Coast trails versus West Coast trails?
Right.
All right. Well, I mean, I think depends on who you are, what trails you were running, kind of like, how strong your arm wrestling match skills are. um, I mean, the reality is over 95 miles, you're going to see a variety of trails. There's going to be sections of it that are going to be really buffed out and smooth. There's going to be sections that are overgrown and brushy. There's going to be sections in the Alpine that are going to be pretty rocky and exposed. So there's not a really simple answer for you. I haven't done a lot of running on the East Coast. I've done a little bit in the Smokies. One of the things I think, historically, the differentiation you'll find is, a lot of the East Coast trails, for whatever reason, you guys don't really believe in switchbacks as much as we do here on the West Coast. But all of the big climbs you'll experience will have pretty steady switchbacks, to kind of get up and over. How's that for an answer?
That's helpful. Very.
Okay. I mean, if you want me to give more clarity, I'm here. Now is the time.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Shannon is also here. I've got Shannon Rolbecky asking about water filters. So short answer on water filters is yes. Best practice, backcountry practices to filter all of your water. And this question comes up a lot. How much water, how abundant water, is it fresh? The reality is there is so much water melting and coming off of this mountain that it's, you're not going to, there's a lot of water and it's easy to filter and access. A couple of things to kind of keep in mind with that would be, you don't want to be filtering out of sort of the main river flows that are at the bottom of each canyon. There's a lot of silt and sand that's in those main river drainages, but there's a lot of tributaries and creeks coming down all around those main river drainages that are really great for filtering and accessing water. In terms of how much water you're carrying and what that distance is between trips, we get into this a little bit more granular each night in terms of like, hey, on like day 3, you need to fill up at Indian Henry. Like, we'll remind you of that, when you're in camp the night before and you're getting ready to head out the next day. But in principle, you can do the whole loop with 2 soft flasks, like in your vest, so that's a half a liter of water, but that strategy really means that you're hydrating at each of those sort of river crossings, and then just carrying, a soft flask between river crossings. Is that helpful, Shannon?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Anything else on that? I mean, I'm kind of asking you to speak for everyone, which is maybe unrealistic, but if anyone else has a water filtering question, throw it in the chat and I'll get to it for sure. So, Audrey Lawrence is asking, do people typically taper leading up to a trip similar to a race? If so, how long would you recommend? Audrey, I'm gonna invite, we can have a conversation about this here if you'd like. Can you hear me, Audrey?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. Where are you coming from, Audrey?
I'm in Seattle.
Seattle. Okay, pretty close. So tapering question, I mean, it kind of comes down to a couple things. One would be kind of how you're orienting to this trip. Like, is this your goal event and goal race? Then yeah, I think tapering similar to a race would be really valuable. There might be other folks out there who are using the Wonderland as a training block for another race, in which sense, like, they're just kind of training, I get a lot of people who are oftentimes doing Cascade Crest 100, and they'll come to Wonderland as a big training block right before they, are going into Cascade. So in some ways, it just kind of comes down to how you're thinking about this trip. Like if you're thinking about it as your goal event for the year or for that sort of like that month, then I think tapering would be really helpful.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of tapering. I mostly just wanted to hear that it's not really required or
Yeah.
highly recommended. Yeah,
No,
that
I
sounds
mean,
good.
it really depends on who you are and what you're doing. So yeah, if this is just part of a larger training block, then you're good.
Cool.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Where are you coming from? You're coming from Seattle, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. I'll keep cruising down. If you got any other questions, let me know. Chris was asking about water filtering. Chris, are you there? Did you get your question answered on water filtering?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Perfect. Yeah. I guess you have recommendations on what's the best form of water filtering. I know
Yeah,
the salmon bottles have those like caps that I think filter it, but I know there's other methods, but curious to hear your thoughts.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely kind of been the most popular amongst my staff, and what I use is the Catadine is sort of the one leading with that soft flask bottle with the top. I know different companies, Solomon has kind of made their own that fits their bottles, but yeah. So if you're someone that uses soft flasks, I think that's definitely the way to go. For folks that are using, if you're more of a bladder hydration hose person, then there's a couple different options where generally people are just kind of squeezing the water. They'll kind of collect their water and then squeeze it into their bag, and I think into their hydration bag, and that works well. I'll be honest, I think folks that try and do the inline filter, I know Sawyer makes like an inline filter. You can kind of cut your hose and put that into your filter. Traditionally, I just find people it gets clogged, for whatever reason, like they have a harder time with the inline filters.
Got it.
Helpful?
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, but yeah, the Catadine or other sort of soft flasks would be the way I'd go.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. And where are you coming from, Chris?
Seattle.
Seattle. Great. Awesome. So James was asking about sort of filtering out of are you there, James?
I am
Where are you coming from?
coming from northern Westchester, north of New York City.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Cool. Have you been out west running before?
I have. I've actually ascended Rainier. I was National Park Service Ranger 35 years ago. So
Oh, no way.
it's been a long time. It's a little bit of a reunion for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Cool. Cool. So it looks like your question is about filter, no filter, glacier silt. So when you say filter, no filter, what do you mean by that exactly?
Again, some of the tributaries, they're running hard. Risk of feeling sort of upset stomach might be low, but it sounds like you answered already. You're all in on filtering the water, so that kind of answered that, which is fine.
Well, I mean, okay, I'll be totally honest and real with everybody here tonight. I haven't filtered water on the Wonderland Trail ever. So, and I've never gotten sick. So that's just full disclosure. I mean, I think best practice is, but I mean, yeah, we're so close to the headwaters of these glaciers. They're moving really fast that,
Fair enough. I'll probably bring my filter anyway.
yeah.
But related question to that is sort
Sure.
of how fast are the rivers running, and kind of how deep can we expect the crossings to be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so kind of going back to kind of my meta overview is like we're gonna cross several rivers. That's just the nature of this trail. How fast they're running is going to be really dependent on several different variables, like how early in the season you're going, what the temperatures have been like, for the day 24, 48 hours previous to. Has there been precipitation in the, in the 48 hours leading up to? And so the reality is you're probably familiar, having been a ranger out here, is like those rivers can change and fluctuate a lot based on what the river's doing. In general, I find that, the earlier trips have, warmer temperature and sort of less reliable bridges in place than sort of later in the season. But there's several factors that play into that for sure, on the rivers.
So folks are mostly running with their set of sneaks that they set off with, and then probably bringing a change of socks or two. Is that sort of kind of protocol, or are folks carrying a extra set of trail runners in a given day?
Yeah, good question. So I would say most people are carrying 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, usually 2 to 3 pairs of shoes that are in their duffel bag that are with them between camps. They're not necessarily, I've never had anyone carry like 2 pairs of shoes on the trail with them. I think this kind of comes down to kind of personal preference of, is it worth it to carry an extra pair of socks or not? And so your feet can get wet from a couple of different things. One, a river crossing, if a bridge is out and you're going through the river, your feet can get wet. 2, if you're in a section where, it's been raining, there's been precipitation, or even if it's just a heavy dew night, a lot of that brush and undergrowth, you can kind of, run through that, and that can soak your feet. On day 3, early season, if it's warm and there's snow on the trail, like that can soak your feet. So the question to bring an extra pair of socks is kind of ultimately a personal question, and it just kind of, I think, comes down to how resilient your feet are, and that's a variable question. But the benefits of having an extra pair of socks, is relatively low weight to a potentially high reward. The thing that I find with like changing socks with people, if you're going to opt for that, I wouldn't change your socks out like right after a river crossing. Like I'd go for a mile or 2 so that your foot your shoes had a chance to kind of like push a lot of that moisture out, and then change those socks. Otherwise, a quick change up and your new fresh socks are just going to be soaked right off the bat.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Glad to have you back out here.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Cool. Paish got her answers. Audrey is asking about the difference. So let's do Audrey here.
I think my last question's answered. I was just wondering if there are any longer stretches without any water sources that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think, we'll go through that in detail the day of. I mean, it's kind of a level of minutia that how much information you can retain, now that we're still weeks away from the trip. But any long stretch, there's only really one stretch that I think about as being a long stretch, and that's on day 3 when you leave sort of Indian Bar up into Nickel Creek. There's a stretch there that's probably approaching 5 miles where there's not a whole lot of reliable water, but it's something that's in our notes that we remind people of the night before.
Okay, sounds good.
Sure, great. Cassie. Can you hear me, Cassie? Cassie Idiron. Oh, here we go. Allowed to talk. Can you hear me, Cassie?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, where are you from?
Yeah. Hello?
Where are you coming from, Cassie?
Actually outside Chicago, so in the flatlands of nothing.
Okay, flatlands of nothing. Well, there's some lakes up there, right? There's something up there.
I guess there's something, but not a lot of elevation, I suppose.
Sure. So your question here is the All Trails app a good backup for navigation? I guess I would say Yes, there's several different geolocating platforms, CalTopo, Gaia, Trailforks, All Trails, they're all kind of doing this. The one that I would, so in terms of just kind of answering your question to the audience at large, is like the real crux of that is being familiar with that app. So kind of how those map layers are working, just kind of being intuitive with it. I wouldn't recommend like switching platforms, you know, just for that trip. So practice with it before you come. If you go to the CalTopo map that we have available on the website, you can download the GPX files and then upload those into your particular platform.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've been using All Trails for a couple of years now, and I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, yeah, they're all different, but that would be sufficient.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure, I mean, I haven't looked at the All Trails specifically anytime recently, but the Wonderland Trail is going to show up on all of these maps. I'm
Yeah.
confident it would be. So, yeah. And while I've got you, I'm just kind of speaking to that and my thoughts in general, just kind of in how that flow works. So we have paper maps that are broken down for each day that we'll send out with people. You know, for folks, I mean, I think any of the phone-based GPS, navigation is a great tool. And it's one of those tools that works great until you drop it in the river or your battery dies. So, think about having, a little battery backup for your phone, and then also carrying a paper map with you if for whatever reason your technology fails is always just good practice. So.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. And you also were kind of asking about the snowpack. It's kind of an interesting thing. We've had a pretty big snowpack here, but honestly, I really won't have up-to-date information until probably another 4 weeks out is when I start watching for if you want to kind of get kind of the most current information on the trail. There is a Wonderland Trail Facebook group. It's not at all connected to Aspire. It's largely used by backpackers. But it's probably one of the best platforms that I kind of just watch as we move into our season, because people are posting on there pretty regularly what the trail conditions are like, and a lot of the early. So that's just a kind of a good, if you're interested in kind of tracking that snowpack, that's a good resource to kind of follow.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep. Marie, let's see, here we go. Can you hear me, Marie?
Yep.
Hi, how are you? Where are you coming from?
I will be coming from Wenatchee, Washington.
Okay, not too far out. So you're asking about microspikes?
Well, actually, I think you've answered both questions. My trip is scheduled late, the end of August. So my guess for me is that I wouldn't need to carry them.
I mean, every time I've done it, I've never carried them, but I've also traveled on snow and I'm pretty comfortable with it. So, I would say for you that probably the best bet, and this could kind of really go for anyone, the first trip will be our guinea pigs, but after our first trip, we'll have probably some of the most current conditions of anyone. So throw the microspikes in your pack or in your duffel rather, and then you can kind of decide, you can get here to Washington, you can get out there to White River. Really, it's day 3 where that becomes an issue. And then we can give you like the most current conditions based on current reports. So
sounds good.
So that's kind of the way I would play it.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, which trip are you coming on?
The end of August, I think it's 25th through 28th.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I had a question. How many people are in that group?
So we have 12 spots in each trip and they're all sold out. So yeah. It'll be full capacity all summer long. Okay. So great. Okay, cool. James, let's see if I can't find you. There we go. James, can you hear me? You're asking about river crossings.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Okay,
we talked already. Yeah, we're good.
All right. So Brendis, can you hear me, Brendis? Do I need to open you up? Are you there, Brendis?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey, where are you coming from?
I'm in Issaquah, Washington.
Okay, close by. The insulative layer. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're kind of spot on in the way you've kind of got your question outlined here. So, I think an insulative layer it really kind of depends. Like having a shell is important. Whether, a rain shell, wind shell is really important. That insulative layer can really depend on the forecast.
Mhm.
So if you're starting off your day and it's gray and rainy and cool, then I would say that insulative layer is a light puffy. If the forecast is 70s with an overnight low at 50 degrees, then I think that insulative layer is just a dry wool top, a long sleeve. So it really depends on the weather specifically. What I'm mostly concerned about is if you're out there and you need to slow down for whatever reason, whether that's an injury or whether that's fatigue, then you have the ability to take off your wet, sweaty outer layer and change into a dry top and put a shell on that's going to keep you warm.
Okay, that makes
Does that
sense.
make sense? Cool. And while I'm kind of on that sort of note, the other sort of required items that we ask everyone to have in their pack would be a headlamp and a bivy sack. And, I really strongly recommend sort of a hat and gloves as well. So in really like the thing that I tell folks, and this will be part of every pre-trip conversation, is like, you should pack to have, in terms of your emergency and required gear, like have the things that are going to allow you to survive a night out. Like we've never ever had to have someone spend the night out. There's been some times where people have had some long days and tough finishes. And in the event that they couldn't finish, just having the ability to kind of like hunker down and sleep on the side of the trail and not die, which largely that's accomplished with that insulative layer and a bivy sack, kind of a bivy blanket, some sort of emergency blanket. So if you have that and things don't go as planned, then you generally just walk away with an interesting story. And that's kind of how we approach it. That's kind of my doom and gloom worst case scenario, but
I have another question while you have me on here.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm asking all these packing questions because I'm just an organizer. I was putting together my big duffel, and my tent and sleeping bag and sleeping pad are taking up so much space. But just wanted to confirm, they do all need to go in that single duffel, right?
I mean, it's nice when they do, just because we'll be schlepping a lot of duffels. If it comes down to where like I have all of my stuff in largely in one duffel plus this little extra, that's going to be okay.
Okay.
We don't want to see any paper bags. We don't want to see anything that is open. So like everything needs to zip up and enclose. Like we're going to be moving it in vans, in a trailer. Duffel bags often end up on our roof rack. So it definitely needs to be enclosed.
Okay. That's comforting to know. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Sure. Great. Okay. And which trip are you going on?
August 11th to 14th.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, we'll see you out there.
Super excited.
Great. I'm gonna keep cruising through here. Marie. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see. Can you hear me, Marie?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Oh, great. You were asking about the inline hydration packs.
And you already answered that as well. I bought one because it was super cheap, but it sounds like it's not the best bet.
Oh, that's for the filter in the inline?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say if you use it and it works for you, great.
I haven't tried it yet, so I'll test it out before I come.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the thing with all of this gear that you're using and testing out for everyone is like, don't show up with something you're trying it out for the first time. You know, take it on some of your training runs, use it, see how it works well, how it doesn't work well, and while you've still got time to kind of like figure it out. So, but I mean, if it works for you, then I'd say great. Historically, people have had a harder time with those.
Okay. I had another question that's while I'm here.
Yeah.
Does the sweep runner, you guys have a sweep runner, right?
Correct.
And do they always stay behind the last person, even if they're really slow?
Even if they're really slow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'll take a moment here and just talk a little bit about our general safety protocols. So we absolutely have a sweep. And they're behind the group. They're traveling with whoever is moving at the slowest pace. And so we generally run with 3 staff. One is the sweep, one person is our base camp person, and one person, we call them our supers. So, you know, we're just going to use like day 1 as a little bit of a microcosm. From Longmire to Mao, which is 34 miles, that sweep will be behind the whole group the whole day. Then our base camp person and our super will load up, break down our camp, and move everything to Mowich Lake. They'll set up our base camp. That's where everyone is running to. That's the finish line for the day. Once things have been set up and we're kind of ready to have people arriving, then we have a staff person. We call them our super. They run that route in reverse. So they'll be starting from Mowich Lake and heading in reverse of the route that everyone's doing. And so they're looking for all 12 of you that we'll have in each group, you know, and they're counting heads until they get to the sweep. And so we call that model our safety sandwich. So, you know, really at any point in time, people will be inside that safety sandwich. And what that means is people are going to be traveling at different paces. We don't expect people to stick together. Inevitably, there's people that kind of find new friends. They find a pace group that works for them. There's some natural accordion sort of that happens with the paces in terms of like, you know, getting up on some of the ridge lines, some of the lakes, some of the river bottoms, or places where people naturally group up, but then they spread out again along the trail. Yeah, and so that's how we roll. Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. So Michael, let's see if I can't get you queued up into this. Are you there, Michael? Michael Brady?
Yes.
Where are you coming from?
Winthrop.
Okay, cool. Awesome. It looks like you're asking about the runs times for each day. Our runners expect to start at the same time. And so,
I'm a real early riser.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm a real early riser.
Okay, real early riser. So day 1, I'll look and see what we've got published for day 1. Yeah, so the first day, so we actually camp at the Big Creek campground. So we meet people on Wednesday. We camp at the Big Creek campground, which is actually outside of the national park. It takes us about 15 to 20 minutes to go into the park and get to the trailhead. And we serve breakfast at 6. We're leaving at 7, departing to go into the park at 7, and generally starting that run at 7 o'clock. That's for the first day. For day 2 and day 3, you'll be running, you know, directly out of Mowich Lake and directly out of White River. And so at that point, you can get up and go as early as you want. There's really, we generally, we'll set a breakfast time in the evening. Like, okay, breakfast will be at 7 tomorrow, or we'll kind of define that. But if you want to get up and go earlier, there's quite a bit of flexibility there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So Chris, see if we can't bring you in on this, Chris. Are you there, Chris? Chris Herney? Hey, gotcha. Cool.
Perfect.
And you're asking about the overnight lows, late July?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shoot. So, I mean, honestly, like August, late July to August, when we run these trips is sort of the most ideal weather window possible, where, the daytime highs average in the 70s, overnight lows. Man, I don't know if I've even like, I'm very cozy and comfortable in a summer sleeping bag, no
Okay.
problem. That being said, weather can roll in and temperatures can drop and be cool. And it can be kind of hot. So there's kind of like a normal standard middle ground, but we're in the mountains, so things can fluctuate. So
Yep.
I'm not sure if that's a very definitive answer for you.
No, it's probably a bit of an open-ended question as well. So
Yeah.
hard question to answer.
Yeah. What I would generally say, are you more concerned about like the running temps or the sleeping temps?
More sleeping temps and just being in camp, like how much warm gear to pack or cold gear to pack. But
Yeah. So I'd say in camp, we have a 10 by 20 event tent that we set up. When there's weather, we put sidewalls on that and we pack a couple of propane heaters. And so inside of our tent, like where people are eating food and finishing, we'll be comfortable, basically no matter what we get. In terms of your sleeping bag, I think you're planning with a summer kind of sleeping bag that's good for like 30, 40 degrees, you'll be fine. And then if for whatever reason it's a little bit cooler, just having your puffy jacket to put on and maybe a pair of fleece pants or something to kind of like take the edge off if you're a cold sleeper. So
okay, cool.
Generally your summertime bag should be adequate.
Yep, perfect.
Cool. Ted. Where's Ted at? See, he's kind of asking the question that everybody wants to know about coffee.
Coffee.
Oh, Ted, you're on. How are you?
I am.
Okay.
I'm good.
What's the coffee situation? Well, the coffee situation is generally there's a few people like you that are like hovering around us, like wanting it immediately. Am I correct?
Yes. I'll be happy to make it actually.
Oh, no, even better. No, we actually have a pretty solid percolator system. We usually do coffee half an hour before our published breakfast time. So if like breakfast is at 7, coffee's usually ready at 6:30. We've got a big extra thermos that we're basically just refilling until everybody's gone. So
that's great. Perfect answer.
If you're like really one of those people that can't get out of bed without their coffee, then pack a Jet Boil and some Vias. But we'll have plenty of coffee, just kind of on demand the whole time. So
great, thank you.
Great, awesome. Shannon, roll Becky, are you on? I think we've talked already. Shannon, are you there?
Yeah, you did it. Roll Becky.
Cool.
How'd you know?
Awesome. We'll be on our own for the most part. Do you recommend a satellite communication device? So fantastic question. So our staff all have Garmin InReach minis. We communicate device to device with those. When you get your runner, if you have a Garmin InReach device, we ask when you fill out your runner profile, which they haven't come out yet. They'll be coming out here, generally 4 weeks before your trip. You can plug in that at InReach, whatever your handle is with your Garmin device, and then we can communicate with you in the field device to device. Do we recommend it? I think in principle, they're a really great device for trail runners to have, because you never know when things are going to go wrong in the hills. Would you go out? Would I tell someone they need to go out and buy one for this trip specifically? No. Are you looking for a good excuse to go out and buy one? And is this it? Great, then do it.
How did you know?
Yeah, well, I've justified a few gear purchases in my life. Yeah, so that's kind of how I would put it. I think the Garmin minis are really great, I think trail runners in principle, anyone that's doing long runs in the mountains should carry them. And if you have one, we'll collect that information so that you can communicate with us while you're out there, but it's not a required piece of equipment. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Yeah, very, thanks.
Cool. Ted, are you there, Ted? We talked
Yeah.
already? You're asking about snow melt?
Yeah, I think you answered that question already.
Great,
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Katie Duncan is asking about, are you there, Katie? Okay, I've asked her to, oh,
I'm here.
hey, Katie, how are you?
Good.
Where are you
How are
coming
you?
from? Good, where are you
Um,
coming from?
Jen and I are from Tacoma. There's
Okay.
2 of us here.
Okay, awesome. You're asking about best way to dry shoes in camp or bring a dry pair for each day.
You already said bring more pairs. Sweet.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
I did have a follow-up though.
Sure.
We were talking about packing. Do you prefer soft-sided like duffel or like a plastic tub?
I can do whatever. I mean, if don't go out and buy something new unless, again, like I was telling, telling Shane, unless you're looking for an excuse to buy a duffel, you don't have to. But yeah, we've seen it all. We've seen suitcases, duffel. I mean, the most common thing we see is the duffel, but we do see suitcases. So, yeah.
We tend to just pack in like a plastic tub and then it's waterproof.
Oh, like a Rubbermaid tub? That's
Yeah.
cool. We pack all of our kitchen gear and a lot of stuff in a Rubbermaid tub, so that's fine. Yeah, we can roll with that.
Okay.
I'm easy. Cool.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. So Ted, I think we've chatted. You're asking about snow. Are you good on that question? Is there more you've got? Ted Listonkin? Man, you're gonna have to help me with that one. You there, Ted? All right. Ted was asking about snow melt. I'll just kind of answer because I'm here. The Wonderland Trail Facebook group is probably the best particularly for the people going on the first trip, is your best answer on current snow conditions. If you're coming on any trip beyond that July 28 to 31 or whatever it is, we'll have the most current intel kind of on it. I'd say pack the things for snow and then just decide whether or not you're bringing them day of. It would be my recommendation. Best way to dry shoes, we did that. Liz, is something should turn on the career injury now? How would we communicate with inspire staff? Let's see if I've got Liz in here. Let's see. Liz, can you hear me?
Hi,
Hi, Liz. Where are you coming from?
I'm in Seattle.
Okay, great. So we've talked about the safety a little bit. Was that helpful, or do you still want some more clarity on that?
No, you answered my question. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Cool, great. Awesome. So Marie has so yeah, we talked about that. The sweep is always behind the last person. We did the soft duffel. Brendis for running field campsite, your new cover drinks. You still there, Brendis? I mean, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I would say in general with like, I'm trying to think what we have for recovery. I say if there's here's what I generally think about any food products that you want. Like we get sponsors that send us stuff. I can't say for sure what we have for recovery. I think generally some recovery stuff ends up in there. If there's a particular product, whether it's for recovery or for your fueling on the trail, that's like your go-to, bring that because it works for you. We'll have a selection of stuff available. Is that helpful, Brendis?
Yeah, I can definitely bring my own stuff. I was just wondering if I could save space by not bringing it, but I'll just bring my own stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to guarantee we'll have it,
Yeah,
and it not, so that's
totally.
So cool. Kat Sampson, I don't think we've talked yet, Kat.
Hi,
Hi, Kat. How are you?
Good.
Where are you coming from?
Portland, Oregon.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, so you're asking about, will there be a foam roller or need one? We have a full recovery kit. So there's a kind of it's like an old climbing crash pad that you can put a yoga mat on, has a foam roller, Theragun, a couple different roller devices that we'll have.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so we don't need, for those of you who come, we don't need 12 foam rollers on the trip. We'll have one there. Cool. Anything else, Kat, while I've got you?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, great. Claudia. Let's see here. Where's Claudia? There's Claudia. Can you hear me, Claudia?
I can. How are you?
Great. I'm awesome. Where are you coming from?
Stamford, Connecticut, same as Ted Listigan.
Okay, cool. Great.
You got a bunch of East Coasters tonight, which is pretty exciting.
It's super exciting. I love my East Coasters. So
Yeah,
great.
we're all really excited to join you out there. My question is about, well, I sent you a whole bunch of questions, but my question is about the river crossings
Okay.
and how kind of deep and wide and cold do they tend to be?
I mean, the answer to that really is, I mean, this is the answer you don't really want. Well, it depends. So what trip are you going on? Which date?
August 4th.
August 4th. So second round. It does fluctuate, right? So I mean, it's a kind of a situation where, I mean, ultimately, and this just kind of applies to everybody, like the mountain wins every time. She is so much bigger and so much more of a force than any of us are. And it's really just a privilege to be out there. That being said, generally speaking, by the time we run our trips, like she's kind of gone through, she's shed a lot of her winter coat. And rivers have kind of tamed down and bridges are installed, but the weather can change and fluctuate. So sort of the worst case scenario. So I'll give you kind of the worst case scenario I've seen in the last 7 years, and then kind of work backwards from that. Worst case scenario was on day 1. The South Mowich River is probably our most consistently unreliable bridge, where we had to go through a braid of like 3 where the river splits. I mean, you kind of, if you've got a situation where doing a river crossing, you don't want to pick like the deepest, strongest channel. You want to kind of scout that river section out and find a place where it's braided and moved out. So I had to do a sort of a 3 braid mid-thigh river crossing at 11:30 at night. So that's kind of my worst case scenario. I'd say 80% of the times I've done, gone across South Mowich, like, oh, the bridge is in, great, fantastic. And so with our safety sandwich model, kind of that super kind of running it from reverse, that super coming from Mowich Lake down to the South Mowich River, you guys, when you come up on day 1 and you've hit the South Mowich River, you've put in at that point, a solid 29 miles. So, you're getting to the end of your day. You want to be done. And so part of their role is to really scout that out. And if there is a bridge that's out, they carry some flagging and markers, and they will sort of flag that best possible route. And will oftentimes, like if the bridge is out, just stay there and post up to help people across a river crossing where a bridge is out. Is that helpful?
It's really helpful. I'm shorter than most of your runners, I'm gonna guess. So I just always like to know how high it is on other people and kind of judge. And I'm gonna guess snow melt, so it's reasonably cold.
Yes, it was. I would put it on more on the. It's unreasonably cold. Like it's pretty cold. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cold. I mean, if the bridge is out, it can be pretty intimidating. I'm not gonna kind of sugarcoat this one. Like you can hear these boulders kind of getting kicked and rumbled through, in the current. There's a lot of sand and a lot of silt in the river. If you have to do a river crossing, you come out the other side, your shoes will be full of sand and silt because that's what's getting churned out of the bottom side of the glacier. You know, so I mean, and I mean, there's people generally every year. There are backpackers that, for sure, every other year that, you know, get caught in a river crossing and get pulled under. Like it is one of the more dangerous elements of the Wonderland Trail are these river crossings. So I don't want to, like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat and say it's like, oh, it's totally safe. Don't worry. Like, so that being said, like, you know, it is a hazard. It's a hazard that we're aware of, and it's one that we make some pretty intentional steps to kind of educate and mitigate where we can. Is that
Sounds
helpful?
great.
Okay,
Yeah, it's really helpful. Sounds
cool.
awesome.
And
Thanks.
so I'm 5'9", and so like I said, the worst case scenario, I had mid thigh, you know, kind of that braided crossing, you know, so that would be about 3 to 4 feet, you know, deep. So
Great.
move fast. So, and
Great.
I guess the other thing I would say too about river crossings, while we're talking about river crossings, would be like if you're traveling solo, and you come to a river crossing and you are not comfortable, then your best case scenario is just to wait there for someone to link arms with and make that crossing together. And so rather than pushing through something that you're not 100% confident on, like I would definitely say, hey, if you reach a bridge is out, feeling unconfident, just wait. I mean, another runner will come, another backpacker will come. For sure, you know, the sweep will come, and linking arms and crossing together is a much safer option than doing it solo on tired legs.
This sounds like a super powerful and majestic experience. Totally looking forward. Thanks, April.
Oh yeah, it's definitely that for sure. Great. Cool. I'm gonna keep going through. Shannon is asking, is there enough room at the trail to leave our cars, or would you rather we shuttle in? So that's a good question. So for leaving cars, if you're driving in, we meet people at Whitaker Mountaineering. It's a great sort of just like hangout spot. If you're getting in early, it's a great place to grab some, you know, there's beer. They've got a beer garden there, you know, so if you're coming in and you're waiting around for a little bit, it's a nice place to just kind of sit. We'll camp at Big Creek Campground and then drive into the park in Longmire. And so if you're bringing a personal vehicle, we actually just invite and encourage people to drive their cars into Longmire. There's a large parking lot there. Cars are left there, you know, constantly for backpackers that are doing the Wonderland Trail and other hikes. So we'll start and finish in Longmire. And so having your car there means when you finish 3 days later, you know, we'll have a final dinner together that Saturday evening, but then just having your car there and an ability to kind of slip out as you need to is totally great. So,
Great, thanks.
yeah, for sure. Scott, I don't think we've chatted. Scott Pike. Can you hear me, Scott? Scott, question is about salt tablets be provided. We definitely have them in our sort of emergency first aid kits. If you're like me, I mean, I sweat a ton, so I just know that, and I carry a bunch of extras. So I'd say we have them sort of as a, you know, as a backup, you know, rather than supplying them for all runners all season. They're more in our med kit. But yeah, we've got them. But if you know you're someone that uses them a lot, I'd say, you know, be sure and pack your own. So Shannon, you're asking about the ride along. No, Marie's asking about the ride along. Are you there, Marie? Ride along?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, ride alongs are pretty common. They have the option, they can either jump in our van and ride with us, or they can drive a personal vehicle. It's really up to them, kind of what would be a better flow.
Okay.
And they can kind of wait to decide the evening of too, to kind of talk about things in more detail too. So there's a little bit of flexibility there.
I was just wondering if I could throw a bunch of extra stuff in their car if they were driving.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but I mean, we pack a lot of stuff too. So there
Okay.
shouldn't be too much extra stuff you should need. So,
Okay.
yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay, I'm scrolling down. Okay, is that it? Is that all the questions?
I can ask another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's like the max grade on any of the climbs, or is there anything that's like super steep? You said there was a lot of switchbacks, but I'm just trying to get an idea of the grades.
Oh, and where are you coming from?
Wenatchee.
Wenatchee. I mean, they're big climbs. There's nothing that's like, I honestly don't have like a percentage grade. I don't know if you're, what, I'm trying to think about the best way to answer your question. Day one has roughly like 10,000 feet of climbing on it. I'll kind of like go in, there's a question here in the chat too, just about the difference between the CalTopo file and like what the, and what our published itinerary looks like. So, I mean, I would say that the climbs there's switchbacks, they're big climbs. I mean, you're climbing up and down pretty significant ridge lines. So, they're never, you're never having to like scramble. They're not that steep,
Okay.
I mean,
Kind of more what I was thinking.
yeah, they're not scrambly climbs. It's a switchback maintained trail. There's never like a section of like, go climb up that rocky scree or that rocky ridge where there's not a trail. There's a trail for all of it. But I mean, you'll be on a set of switchbacks for, the big life. So here's an example of like, on the first day from Mowich River, you're climbing, probably 2,500 feet in about 3 miles.
Okay.
So
that gives me a really good idea. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Just kind of looking here at some of the questions that were sort of outside of the chat that were also kind of came through. Kind of dealing with some computer stuff here. Let's see. James, did we answer your question about aid stations? I don't know if you can hear me out there. I don't see you in here anymore. We did talk about that. Rochelle Harding. Are you there, Rochelle? Can you hear me, Rochelle? You're asking about the CalTopo file. Hello, Rochelle. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go and answer it for her and for everyone else. So I mean, the CalTopo map definitely underrepresents the mileage. The course packet has what I think are pretty accurate mileage and elevation profiles. It's 93 miles, it's 22,000 feet cumulative. Just for whatever reason, the way that CalTopo maps it, like underrates it. But it's that's just kind of what it is. I would suspect, I haven't done this, but I think if you download the GPX file and then upload it into Gaia, I'd be interested to see what Gaia gives you when you download that GPX file. Is that helpful, Rochelle? Can you hear me? So, we talked about, Michael was asking about the time of day. We talked about inline filters. We talked about rivers running. Cool. Okay. Unless I'm mistaken, that is all of the questions that have come through in the chat and in the Q&A. So I would say, is there anything else that anyone has in terms of questions to throw that out? Either if you've invited to the conversation to throw that out now or to put it in the chat. While people are kind of taking a moment to do that, I'll just kind of say one more thing. So kind of what to expect between now and your trip. So 4 weeks out, a runner profile email that's a chance for you to report on any dietary preferences, a chance to plug in what your training has looked like, any medical conditions you have. We create a runner profile for all of our runners that really helps us get a sense of our group and what their background is and their preparation. And so that will come out 4 weeks before your trip. And then the week sort of leading into your trip, there'll be kind of one last final email that we send out. And it sort of is it's kind of the mirror of like, okay, here's the information that you've given us, you know, and we mirror it back to you and says, hey, here's the information that we're planning on in terms of any rental kits, ride-alongs, dietary preferences. This is what we know, the information you've given us. So this is a chance to double check that. Any sort of updates or just sort of last minute things, that also goes out in that final trip email. So, so that's what to expect between now and your trips. A couple other questions have come in here. Kat is asking about a park pass for parking at the trailhead. Good question. I'm glad you asked that, because so to drive your personal vehicle into the park, you either need to pay the entrance fee or have a national park pass. So you don't, there's not a parking pass required at the trailhead, but to get into the park, independent vehicles do have to pay. If you're in the shuttle and you're riding with us, then you're covered. If you're driving your personal vehicle, you will need a park pass or a park entrance fee. Marie is asking about the average age of the participants. I haven't looked at it for this particular year, but I would say our demographic skews, you know, more people in their 40s and 50s and early 60s than there are people in their 30s and 20s. It's pretty uncommon for us to get people in their 20s. If they do, it's kind of later 20s, you know, a few early 30-year-olds. It usually seems to about, you know, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and then, you know, into their early 60s where we see most people kind of some coming out on our trips. So
Sweet. I thought I was going to be the oldest person there, so that makes me feel a little better. I
yeah,
might still be, but
yeah, I think the oldest that we've had is like 64, 65, you know, that have done the Wonderland. You know, with us, I think the youngest was like, you know, 28, 29. But yeah, definitely it kind of skews
Cool.
into the 40s, 50s, early 60s. So, yeah. Great. Okay. All right. That's what I've got. So this, I mean, this is really for you. So hopefully, I really appreciate everyone tuning in. We've been doing this for all of our trips now. I'd say it's one of the kind of the benefits of COVID. It's like, oh, hey, this Zoom thing is actually kind of useful for communicating with people en masse and, you know, very different locations. So thank you all for tuning in. Really excited to meet all of you. It's the thing that, you know, we've been doing trips on the Wonderland for, this will be our 7th season. So really familiar with the trail and the terrain. It's a place I look forward to going back to every year. It's stunningly beautiful. And it really is a pleasure having new people there every year. It really makes it special. So call that a wrap. I'll hang out for another couple minutes, so feel free to sign off. If there's a question that you just want to ask me about, just sort of in a more intimate setting without as many people hanging on in the viewership, that's fine. But feel free to sign off, and we'll see you on the Wonderland.
thank you.
Great. Take care,
Great.
everyone. Okay. Dan, looking forward to seeing you. Okay, great. Awesome. And end.